Okay, this video is going to be the first of a two-part video on creating a game with our new knowledge of the coordinate grid and coordinate plane. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to create, and we're going to create a project, and your teacher will tell you what your project is supposed to be named when you are going to share or add it to the studio so that you guys can showcase and share your work. But we always want to name our projects right away so that we know what it is that we're working on. So I'm going to go right up at the top before I forget, and I'm going to rename my project, and I'm going to call mine my first name coordinate game. Coordinate game. And I'm going to hit the button to save it. Now, I haven't shared my project yet, which is fine, but remember, for your teachers to see your projects, you need to make sure that you share them, so we can see where we're going with that and what we're going to do to share this. So the first thing we're going to do is I don't want to use the scratch cat, so we want to get our sprite. And so we've talked about what we're doing with our sprite. So I'm going to go and I'm going to delete out the scratch cat. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a sprite. And I've already got one that I downloaded for my game that I thought was going to be kind of cool. So I'm going to drop this sprite in here. So it is going to get in there. So there's my sprite that I got. So I put in an F-18 Hornet for my coordinate game. All right, and this is going to make sense as we get a little further along. Now, what we want to do is we've learned about the coordinates. And so now when you are looking for coordinates, we're going to start off our game with a background grid that will make the coordinate plane for us. So what I'm going to do is go and I'm going to just click to start a background. And what I want you to do is type in the word grid, and you should see the coordinate plane. Now, this one is a really cool coordinate grid because it tells you where your limits are for this scratch canvas. So it tells you that my y, the maximum that I can go for my positive y values is 180, negative 180 for my y value, and then my x value is 240, negative 240. Now, remember, we talked about you've got your coordinates, your quadrants. This is quadrant 1 up here, which is going to be on our top right. And then we go to quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Now, you notice right away that my sprite is pretty big. It takes up a majority of the grid there. And I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I can resize my plane here, and I go down to the size here, and I'm going to make it smaller. And so this is going to help us out. So here's what you're looking at is when you're making your objects, when you're making your sprites, your sprite location is always the center of whatever your image is. So if you've got a huge image, to get it to a certain coordinate, it might take you a lot of moving around because you got to change your stuff and make sure that you get it to the right size, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually make this even a little bit smaller. So I'm going to make this like 30%. There it is. So that's a pretty good size plane. Okay, now remember, for our coordinate grid, our plane, or my sprite, the center of my sprite is going to be what is going to be the point on our coordinate plane. And so I can see down here, so I've got the name of my sprite. I can rename my sprite if I need to. So I'm going to rename this sprite right here, and I'm going to call this sprite Maverick. Okay, so I got too many. Maverick. Okay, and it tells me that my plane right now is at coordinate negative 64 for x and negative 12 for y. So if I grab my plane and I move it around, I can see where it's at. And what we want to do is we want to have our plane start at the point of origin. Okay, so two ways we can do that. I can move this plane to the point of origin, which it's not at right now. Origin is right here. It's where your x and y coordinates meet at the middle. So I can type in where I want him to go, or I can move him down there. So I'm going to type in that I want him at 0, and my y, put my plane at 0. Okay, so my plane is now at our XY coordinate, at our origin. And you can see that it kind of goes right through the middle of my plane. So that's my plane is now at our point of origin. So we talked about, when you move to the grid and you have, certain numbers will make you move one direction in the grid, and certain coordinates will make you move the opposite direction, and finding some points. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create movement using our new knowledge of our coordinate grids. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go under our control, and we are going to set this up to show what happens. So what we're going to do is we're looking for the when a key is pressed. So, and it'll say the space key, but we can make any key that we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag this in, and we're going to need one of these. And so what we're going to do is when key is pressed. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change mine, and I'm going to make my game played with the arrow keys. Okay, you can do, traditionally when you're doing movement, use the W for up, A for left, D for right, S for down, or use the arrow keys, up, down, left, right. I'm going to make this nice and easy, so I'm going to use the arrow keys. So I'm going to choose the arrow key. So when the up arrow key is pressed, I want my plane to fly upwards on my coordinates. So what I'm going to do is go back to my motion. And what I want to do is I don't want to do move to 10 steps. I want to have my change my coordinates. And so what I want to do is I want to change my coordinates. So if this is going to make it, my up arrow is going to move up, I'm going to be moving this way, up and down. So if I'm moving up, I'm changing which coordinate? I'm going to change my Y. So what I'm going to do is go up and do my change Y. Okay. So what I'm going to do is change Y, and I'm going to make this, so if I leave it at 10, right, there it is, I leave it at 10, and I push the up arrow, my plane moves up by 10. Okay, now nothing else happens. I can't get them to go anywhere else. I can only move up. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this because I only want to move by 1. And it's going to make sense for our game here in a minute. So when I move up, when I push the up key, the plane moves by 1. Right? So if I hold down the arrow, but it's a lot slower, it's a little bit slower to move them. Okay, so we get them going there. Now what I need to do is we're going to duplicate this. So if I do Control-C, Control-V, I can duplicate it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this now to show, okay, so now I've done the up arrow. What you need to do is program in the rest of your movement so that you can get your plane moving all around the field. So what I'm going to do is change this to my down arrow now. And my Y movement, positive values are moving me up towards the top of the screen. I would need to add this, change this into a negative value to move down. So now the negative value moves me down, and the positive value moves me up. Negative down, positive up. There it is. There's my plane. Now what I need to do is just get the rest of it in here. So I want to get the rest of my coordinate movement in. So again, I can copy this or just hit Control-V again because I've already done it once. And there's that one. And I'll do Control-V one more because I got 4 movements to do. And I'm going to make these my left and right. Now what I need to do though is I'm not changing my Y value, I'm changing my X value. So I'm going to change here and have this go to show my left arrow. And I need to get rid of this because I don't want to change my Y anymore. So I'm going to get rid of this one here, and I'm going to do my change X value. And that's going to change my X value. So I drop in my change X value. Now again, if I'm doing my left arrow, that means I want to go to the left of the screen. So I need to make sure I get my negative X value. So this is going to be -1. And change this to my right arrow. And I'm going to change my X with a positive value. Okay, so this is going to give you a much more precise way of getting your sprites to move to certain locations rather than just doing, if you do just the move 10 steps, they're going to move in the direction that they're going. And you can get a lot more precision when you're doing this. So now when I've got all this, I push the down arrow, test it out. My plane will move down. There it is. My plane's moving down. Left arrow, my plane moves to my negative X. Right arrow, my plane moves to the right arrow, the plane moves to my positive X. Up arrow, positive Y values. There we go. So I've just learned how to code using the coordinate grid. Now, what we want to do is we don't want to play our game with the coordinate grid sitting there. So, we'll have it for now, but eventually we're going to take that background out of there and put something else in that makes our game a little bit cooler. But we want to make sure that our guy knows, where he's at and what he's doing, like our sprite. So especially if we're going to do a game that's based on how we use the coordinates. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up a couple things. So we're going to add in our event key, and what we're going to do is the when click. Now, anytime you use this when clicked, this is going to be when you start the game. Now, one of the things that's unique with Scratch is everything is you just have to have everything in your program and have it run it, have it in the coding box. So it's not having to be in a certain setup or formula or anything like that. So, but when we do this when clicked, what we want to do is we always want to start our character or start our main guy at the point of origin. So no matter where I'm at, what I'm going to do is when I click when the green flag is clicked, which means when I start my game, I'm going to do the motion, the blue go to X, and I want to go to the origin. And the origin for us is going to be that 0, 0, 0. Okay, so this is going to get me to my point of origin, 0. So when I hit the play button, my plane will always return, or your sprite, whatever your sprite is, will always return to the start point. Right now, your start point doesn't necessarily have to be the point of origin. You maybe want to start yours all the way down in quadrant 4, which again, down here, or quadrant 2, again, up here, right? So you can pick what you want your start point to be. I'm going to have mine always start at the middle. Like when the game starts, my guy is going to be right at the middle, okay? Now, you can have more than one event triggered when you start. And so we're going to create another event trigger for the start of the game. And so I'm going to drop in another when the green flag is clicked. And what this is going to do is the same thing. Anytime you click this green flag, this is what's going to happen. And while we're playing the game, we're going to use a forever loop. And what that means is what we want to do is forever and ever, as long as I've got this game going, these commands are going to be taking place. Oh, I didn't do the right one. I want to do the forever. So I'm going to go in and get my forever. There's my forever. So I'm going to drag this forever loop in here, and I'm going to snap it right onto that block. And so that's going to say, okay, here's what's going to happen. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to have, because eventually we want to get rid of this coordinate grid and show something else awesome. But I want my guy to know where he's at. So when I'm playing the game, people aren't going to be able to see all this behind the scenes of where the X and the Y coordinates are, but we want them to know where they're at in the grid. So we're going to have our sprite tell us where it's at. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the looks button, and we're going to use the say. Okay. And this is going to be, we don't want to do say for 2 seconds. I got the wrong one. I want to do the say. I got the wrong one here. Let me get rid of that one. I want to do the say. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, and we're going to drop this in here to say what we're doing. Okay. So now my plane is going to say, right, if I said it right now, it'd say hello. But what we want to do is we want to change this up, and we have to go into some math operators, which is our green blocks, and we are going to have to use what's known as the join. And the join is we're going to put two things together. Okay, so we're going to have this join, and what join says is we're just going to put them. We're going to put them together. We're going to make them two things. So we're going to drop this join block right into this circle for hello, where it says hello. We'll drop it right in there. It's going to say join. Okay, now this is you got to follow me here because this is going to make a lot of sense. So we are going to say, the first thing that I'm going to put in here is I'm going to put I am at. Okay, now you might change your wording at, but I'm going to put I am at. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I need to add another join because we want to keep adding more stuff in here. So we can add a join and another join, another join. And what this is saying is we're just going to add everything together. So I'm going to drop another join into that second open spot. So I got this second open spot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a parentheses. Now we can keep adding as many kind of joins as we want to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put I am at, and I'm going to put the parentheses in here to give my coordinate of where I'm currently at. And I'm going to add another join in here because I'm going to need some more spaces. So I'm going to add my third join. And for this one, what we're going to do is instead of putting in a word, what we're going to do is we're going to go to sensing, which are going to be these light blue blocks. And the sensing block, what we want to do is we want to put in, and you want to find X position, right? So what we're looking for is X position. So it is going to be in here. Let's find it. Oh, got out of my sensing blocks here. Was it under our motion? It is under our, let's see here. See if we can find this X position. There it is. So it's under our motion. So we have our X position. Okay, so we're going to drop in our X position. There. Okay. I am at X position. Okay. And now we're going to, now one of the other things that you can see is this is, and we're going to add another join. I'm going to come back to this X position, Y position direction again. So I'm going to add one more join. Add one more join for us. And what we need to do is we're going to put in our Y position as well. So here's our join. Go back to our motion. And we're going to drop in our Y position. Our Y position. Oh, actually what we want to do, hold on, I'm going to leave that there. I almost forgot, when we write our coordinates, we always separate them with a comma. So I'm going to put my comma in there. And I need to add one more join to get it. I almost made a huge mistake and did not set up my coordinates correctly. So what I'm going to do is add one more join here. Now I drop in my Y position. Drop in my Y position, and I put in my final parentheses. Okay, so now when I hit the start button, right, here's what's going to happen. When I hit this green start button, my plane is going to go back to 0, 0, and it's going to tell me where I'm at. And anytime I move, it should change with it. So I hit this button to start. There it is. I'm at 0, 0. So I move to the right. There it is. See, my plane is moving as he goes. All right, so this is plotting exactly where I'm at on the coordinate grid. Now, if I made my movements bigger, right? So if I make these bigger, so if I make this, if I move by 10, I move by, let's change this X by 10 as well, right? So if I go up, now watch, so it's going to go, I hit the green start button, starts this over, go back to 0. There it is. See how I'm moving by 10s now? and I can change and do all the movement. So you have just created a sprite. This is the first part of your game. So you've created a sprite, and you have set it up to move it anywhere on the screen using your coordinate grid and using your XY coordinates and keyboard commands. Great work.